I'll call this regular meeting of the City Council to order Tuesday, July the 25th at 6 p.m. We will begin by having an invocation by Reverend Alan Noah for Barnett Chapel, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Maria Hall, who has not quite yet been installed as Mayor's Youth Advisory Council member, but we're happy to have her here. You may stand if you wish. Be sure your phones are off, please.
I invite you to bow your heads and join me in a word of prayer. Our Father, God of justice and mercy, thank you for the gift of life, for our mayor, our council members, department heads, staff members, and all these souls assembled here today. Thank you for the opportunity to serve the people of our city. Help us to act with character and conviction. Help us to listen with understanding and goodwill. Help us to speak with clarity and restraint. Give us a spirit of service. Remind us that we are stewards of your authority. Guide us to be leaders your people need. Help us see the humanity and dignity of those who disagree with us, and to treat all persons, no matter how weak or poor, with the reverence your creation deserves. And finally, our Father, renew us with the strength of your presence and the joy of helping to build a community worthy of the human person. We ask this as your sons and daughters, confident in your goodness and love. Amen.
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 Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor and Maria, for getting us started this evening. Item number 1 is announcements of community interest. Ms. Craig?
Well, the Lego Club continues to meet at the library every Thursday from 1:30 to 2:30, and the children ages 4 and up are welcome to participate in this free event. Wednesday, July 26, beginning at 10:30 a.m., the library will host a special story time with the Kerr County Animal Services Department, who will discuss their role in ensuring the health and safety of the public. The event is free and will be held in the meeting room, Bud Holdsworth Library. That's tomorrow morning. The city's competitive lifeguard team placed first overall in the Central Texas Lifeguard Competition in New Braunfels on July 17th. The team is now qualified for the state competition to be held in Round Rock on July 31st. The public is invited to attend their training on Friday, July 28th at 9 a.m. at the Olympic Pool. The city's Parks Department encourages everyone to join them on Friday, July 28th, Louise Hayes Park, for Movies in the Park. The movie will be Storks, sponsored by the Callow Foundation, and will begin at approximately 9 p.m. Bring the family, chairs, blankets, flashlights for this free outdoor evening at the movies.
Okay. Any announcements, my council? Mr. McDaniel, do you want to introduce?
I'll do that later in the meeting.
Okay,
Yes.
fine, in your part. Any other things from the audience? I don't have any request forms on item number 2, visitors and citizens forum. Is there anybody who wishes to speak that did not fill out a form? If not, we will move ahead to item number 3, which is the consent agenda. And council, I'm going to ask briefly that 3C be taken off for a little bit of discussion. Is there anything else we wish to remove? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve items 3A and 3B.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries 5-0. Item number 3C, I have one question, and I suppose this would be for Kyle Burrow. I asked this question, and maybe this is just for council to know, but in the bid, when the information was given to us by the company that won the award, there was some information concerning lane miles in other communities and counties. And let me just read the agenda item. It's construction contract with Champion Infrastructure LLC for the 2017 crack seal project in the amount of $269,060. So we're asking the city manager to execute that contract with the winning bid, which was Champion Infrastructure. But Kyle, I did ask a question of Mr. McDaniel, and I presume you answered it, but so council would know and we would have maybe an understanding. The other information we received gave the lane miles and the price. And for instance, the first one in Collin County was 222.49 lane miles. In Collin County for 163,743. This is 48 lane miles for 269,000. Can you explain, is there a difference in that work?
I don't know the scope of that project, but one thing that we have had, whether it's our slurry seal or crack seal projects, the contractors have alluded to us that as we adopted it on a block-by-block scenario, instead of full street width, there's higher cost because of additional mobilization. So that's what we're seeing, compared to the industry standard, we have elevated costs due to the way we adopted that. As our street program moves forward, that would be one thing that we would look at is how can we reduce cost, effectively mobilize contractors to.
Because it's quite a bit of difference, council. If you look at that page, like there were 39 lane miles in Dallas County, where Mr. McDaniel came from, 54,800, and that's a huge difference there.
Yes,
So, Mr. McDaniel, we might look at that policy. I don't know if it's internally, but I just looked at all of those numbers there, and for the work, and it's crack seal and mobilization in these other entities, these other locations. It was quite a bit less.
Right.
I think as we package, as he mentions, as we package the program for the next fiscal year, we'll be looking at that issue.
Okay. Would you recommend we go ahead with what we have?
We need to get this work done because we're already behind in our street work, and we've addressed the streets that Food Grow has identified, and that's part of the reason why we're in this position is trying to stick strictly to that plan. And so I think we need to kind of look at a different approach going forward, but we need to get this done.
Okay, so in the bid, and I won't belabor it, but in the bid, is it specific, is it specified as to what roads and what portions of roads that
Yes,
they'll
ma'am.
do? Okay.
If you look in your packet, you have the actual section 70 that the contractor submitted.
Yeah. You're right.
That entire table on, I think it encompasses about 4 or 5 pages, is every block section that will be hit by crack seal this year.
Okay.
So,
And we got into that because that's the way Few Grove
yes,
gave
ma'am.
us their
They did the analysis based off of that, and we adopted
Based off
of
what we
Peter's.
could afford or
Yes,
what we agreed to pay. That's
Yes,
how they broke it into sections, so. Okay, I just wanted everybody to understand. Is there any other questions for Mr. Burrow? If not, I would entertain a motion to authorize the city manager to enter in a contract with Champion Infrastructure.
Yes.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second? There's a motion and a second. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries 5-0. Item number 4A is the second public hearing for the annexation and zoning of an 11.341 acre tract being a portion of a certain 1,131.78 acre tract, part of Comanche Trace, a golf and residential community located in southwest Kerrville. Before I open it up for the second public hearing, Ms. Kunzel, is there anything that's been amended or recommended or changed?
No,
Okay.
ma'am, just very simply, I just wanted to show you where we are in the process here. We're in the middle of a fairly complex process, but a pretty simple case, really. There is no action requested tonight. Those are coming the next 2 meetings. That's all I have.
Any questions by council? If not, I'll open it up for a public hearing at 6:09. Was there any member of the public that wished to speak or ask any questions about this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing at 6:09. Thank you for the presentation. No action is required. Item number 5A is ordinance and second and final reading of ordinance number 2017-14, abandoning and vacating all right, title, and interest in a fire lane easement is located between the intersections with both Bluff Ridge Drive and Glenview Drive and being dedicated to the public pursuant to the Forest West 4 Phase 3 plat, a subdivision out of the Florentine Laura Survey number 123, abstract number 225, located within the City of Kerrville, Kirk County, Texas, according to the plat thereof. Recorded in Volume 5, page 45 of the plat records of Kirk County, said easement impacting Lot 8, Block 6, and Lot 7, Block 7, as specified on said plat, finding that said dedicated right to the city is not required for future use as a fire lane easement, and ordering recording. Again, this is the second reading of this ordinance. I think Chief Smith and others presented it. No changes to the ordinance. Was there any discussion or questions by council?
We have discussion, not so
Right.
much questions. Just as a rehash of what's gone on, basically. The fire lane's been in existence, and the new property owner is asked to have it abandoned. And I guess they had discussed with the fire chief and the fire marshal about if it was being used or not, as making it a reason not to, or to allow it to move forward with the abandonment. And in explaining it to us, and correct me if I'm wrong in what I'm saying, but the chief had actually said there were three main. Well, number one, it isn't the primary route to service Bluff Ridge. So I guess the route they're taking, the primary route, is going to end up coming up Coronado, going left on West Lane, right on Westview, and then right on Bluff Ridge. So that was one thing. So it's not the primary access to that hill. He said also that the fire lane itself was too narrow to be considered a primary access point. It wouldn't be their first choice. I guess the lane itself is 14 feet, and the access, the apparatus is at most is 9.5 feet, so
Correct.
something like that. And then the fire lane has over time not been, the vegetation has grown over, further limiting that width. So that would be another reason it's not so great. And then the steepness of the fire lane, essentially at the approach, the danger was the newer vehicles being longer would bottom out going up, or even, I guess, coming down. And so that was the parameters as they were presented. Councilman Vokel and I actually had met with the fire chief and the fire marshal last week, and we discussed sort of our questions about it and raised some issues as far as abandoning it. So what we talked about was actually, first off, the initial move to abandon it was back in 2001, was also based on the statement or conclusion that was drawn back then that the original use of the fire lane was as a temporary access created simply because West Crest to the north of Bluff Ridge hadn't been completed, I guess, in the original development, or it wasn't going to be completed. So this was going to give sort of a secondary access point, and the idea was that was presented was that West Crest, once it was finished, there wouldn't be a need for the secondary access, right? That was the way it was
That's pretty consistent with what the 2001 agenda reads.
And so Councilman Vokel, actually being in the surveying business, they actually had the original plat. And so we found a note on the original plat that said it wasn't actually designed to be a temporary access. It was basically supposed to be a secondary access point to bring into play the possibility of utilizing the fire hydrant at the base of the fire lane. It's actually across Glenview, but right at the base. And again, while it's not the ideal method, it was never really designed to be that. It was designed to be a secondary one. So in our discussions with the chief, we basically asked, okay, what would it take to make it even a viable alternative? And so clearly the vegetation is an issue. And truthfully, vegetation in a fire lane is actually supposed to be dealt with by the property owners, but over time, it would have to be monitored, and right now, it would have to be cleared. And so that's an issue, but that's a fairly simple issue. The fire lane being too narrow, it's not too narrow to access, it's just too narrow to maybe be created as the primary route that you would go. But you could go up it, right? And then the other was the steepness, and so we asked you to check if it was even possible to get I guess it was the ladder truck that was causing the issue. And so you checked that out, and it was basically, again, you can't go flying hot up the fire lane, but you can go up there without it scraping the fire truck. So again, not the primary choice, but a valid access. And under the current circumstances, you know, the way things work around here these days is we're always planning for contingencies, whether they're remote possibilities or not. We're always looking to satisfy that. Even in a little town like Kerrville, we basically go to the trouble of having emergency plans for things that will probably never ever happen here, but we go to the trouble of it. So in this case, a scenario like Bluff Ridge, because there's only one way into Bluff Ridge Drive. So to get to the houses at the top, there's only one road in there. Fire lane creates a second one. If there was ever a blockage at the base of the Bluff Ridge, a fire lane might be useful. The other scenario, which is, I guess, more possible, is that one fire hydrant at the base, not having enough pressure. Again, it's not likely to happen, but there is a pump that adds the pressure to that to make it useful to get up the hill, right? And so we would have some, I mean, there's some risk, marginal or not, there's some risk that would fail at a time we don't want it to fail, correct?
That would be a question for Public Works. I'm not sure how that pump station facilitates the pressure. I'm certainly
but basically that was the design of the fire lane in the first place, was basically to create that secondary safety net, if you will. And so if we were to abandon the fire lane, we basically are making, even if it's marginally, we're making the homeowners on the hill less safe. Provided I think everybody understands that no matter what occurs, fire department's going to get up there somehow. They're going to put out the fire somehow. But the question really is, are we making it more or less safe if we take it away? We're not costing anything to leave it. We aren't actually taking land away from homeowners, because the original plat for this never had this land. It was always an easement, is my point. So it appears to me that the better good is done by leaving it in place, leaving the easement or not abandoning it. Like I said, if for no other reason, to remove it is to make them less safe. And nobody's actually suggesting that it be a walking trail, just so everybody understands that. It has been used to my knowledge, it has been used for EMS calls over the years. I don't believe I could be wrong, but it's ever been used with a fire call. Is that correct?
I don't have
you didn't have
any
a recollection
information
of
to
any,
validate
right?
that it's been used for an EMS call. I think I shared with you
Yeah.
all the numbers. In the last 4 years, we made 5
Right.
calls. 4 of them have been EMS. 1 has been for a malfunction in a smoke
Right.
detector.
So again, like I said, it's a secondary access point that I think we'd be irresponsible to abandon it, as it more than likely makes the hill even a little bit less safe, and we've already invested in it in the first place. So I guess that's why I'll end up voting against abandonment.
Any other comments by council?
Is this during the public hearing? Do you want to hear from the council?
There's no public hearing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is just second
This is
reading.
second reading.
Oh, sorry. That's a thorough analysis. I find myself not persuaded, however, and I'd like to say why. An easement is, by definition, an encroachment on somebody's property rights. Very basic law in this country respects private property. The people who bought this lot want to use it all, and the fire chief says we really don't have any need for it anymore. Haven't used it ever, don't need it. It just seems to me that it's illogical for us to take from these people part of their property when we don't need it for a public purpose. In addition, I'm concerned about costs of maintenance, ongoing, and I'm concerned about liability. This looks to me like an attractive nuisance. We've had reports of motorcycles going up and down for fun. And you can see when you look at it, it looks like it would be a lot of fun. But dangerous. How much is it going to cost us to figure out some way to barricade it so that it isn't used for joyriders and that people who are walking on it are not endangered? It seems to me the risks much outweigh the small value that this can be. If you look at this map, there are all kinds of streets in that area now that the fire department can use to get to anybody on Bluff Ridge Drive. Just because you have only one way into your property is not automatically something to worry about. My house has only one entrance. It's a cul-de-sac street. I'm at the end of it. Behind me is undeveloped property. So that's not an automatic risk. I just think we have to have a very important reason for denying a property owner the full free use of his land at any time. And what I've really heard so far is reasons that sound more like recreation. We like to walk there, we like to sit there and watch the sun go down. We haven't, has anybody there really used it during icy conditions? And how many times? Very rarely, right?
She's very hard of hearing. You need to speak
Oh,
up.
very.
Shouldn't have anything to do with that.
If we're going to have a discussion, I would ask that someone, if you would like to question somebody, then
Oh,
you approach the podium and identify yourself, or you can choose to respond. But so we have it for the record. That's why we do that.
Well, I'll just summarize my impression of the comments so far have been more the neighbor's preference and convenience than real concerns of safety. And even if their perception of safety it makes this necessary, that doesn't line up with the advice we're getting from the professionals. So finally, I think, when you're an elected official, you always want to make everybody happy. What you find out after you've done it for a while is that that's impossible. If you make these people happy, those people aren't. If you make them happy, these people aren't. So what you finally got to come back to is what's the law? And the law says that property should have the free use of it right to the edge unless there's a clear public need for that easement, and we don't have a clear public need for that easement anymore. I think we should vote to abandon it.
Any other comments? I do have one speaker request form, Deborah Keach.
Sorry.
Hi, I'm actually here for my clients, Ken and Debbie Becker, who own Lot 7. And they just couldn't be here, and I'm their realtor and longtime friend. And I agree with Council Member Chamberlain and some of their positions on it, and I've got some additional ones of my own, but are, you know, they've owned that lot for quite a long time, and they have watched people walk up and down it. They've watched kids sled down it during icy times, and it's really steep, and it's dangerous, and it hasn't been maintained. It's crumbling. I actually walked up it to take pictures whenever I listed their house. And, you know, the intention wasn't for it to be a walkway. The intention was what the fire chief had to say about it. And, you know, my question to anybody else who wants to use it as a walkway is, if there was your lot that you had either for sale or you were going to build on it, again, your property rights are very, very important. And I've done real estate in a lot of states and lived in a lot of states, but especially in Texas, and it's one of the things that we love about our state. But that's a very, very important right. And having that easement on there affects their buildability and their value. And you know, it's not being used as a fire lane. It's not at all. There's no need for it. And so they asked me to come and speak on their behalf, asking that it be abandoned as well.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening.
I had any others who wish to speak?
May I say something?
If you'd approach the podium, please, and identify yourself.
I'm sorry for the attire, but I've got a senior softball game after this meeting. My name is Bob Bullion, and I've been a professional engineer and consultant for over 40 years. And my primary specialty is the design and analysis of water and wastewater systems. And without going into a whole bunch of detail here, I wasn't asked to come here as a paid consultant, just to add a little bit to maybe this conversation. And my first thought is, I doubt seriously if the booster pump station on West Crest has the capability of providing total fire flow to a fire truck at the top of the hill. Therefore, if it doesn't, then the pump won't work properly and you'll have cavitation, and now you have a major problem with trying to meet the fire flow. So therefore, you have to look at an alternative workaround. That alternative workaround would be tying into the fire hydrant on Glenview and running the hoses up the current fire lane. I mean, that's only the logical approach to this thing. So there is a definite usage. Unfortunately, if someone did have a fire on top of that hill, that's the wrong time to check to see whether you have the capability of providing adequate fire flow. And I won't belabor this thing anymore, but an alternate item on this thing would be, is if you folks found that there wasn't adequate pressure on top of the hill up on Bluff Ridge, then you would have to go in and do something to provide adequate pressurization, either through fire flow requirements or just normal operations. And if you did that, you would probably have to loop that dead end line that runs from the bottom of the hill to the top of the hill. And if you did that, you would require probably a looped line from that point all the way down to Glenview. And if you were going to do that, you would also probably need to have an easement. And if you give up an easement, then recapturing an easement is going to be a lot more difficult down the road if you ever need to loop that line.
Any comments or questions while you're here? I thank you very much for those remarks and for your expertise. We're not going to belabor this anymore. We've been down this road a couple of times now, and I know it was visited in the past. I just have One last comment to make. My whole concern is about safety, health, and welfare of the citizens, and this is a very difficult issue because there's rights on both sides. In my observation, there was an easement on these properties when these properties were purchased, and it has continued to be that way. And also, we have laws that we discussed at last meeting that we are actually going to be somewhat in violation of if we abandon this easement. We have a distance requirement to reach around the buildings and distance to fire hydrants. It may be small. I know Chief can fix it. I know you can join hoses together and we can make it work, but that's time, and time could be a life. And in my opinion, to save a life is the most important thing that I would consider here. I do believe there's a way to block it. I do believe we can put a barricade up. I also believe that the owner will have right to use that, both owners, and I am concerned about the fire flow issue. So in my opinion, these things coming to light since our first meeting, I also will be voting against abandoning.
Bonnie, what are you referring to the email we all got from the chief about the difference between the requirements for commercial property, multi-story, and single-family residential? Because my impression from that email was that we were within the legal distance.
For both of those, Chief?
Right.
Yes, the question that was raised on the 150-foot rule, that applies to other structures outside of residential structures.
So we're not in
To
violation.
reach around.
Yeah.
We're
Okay.
not in violation of the law.
And distance to the fire hydrants as well?
There's roughly from the hydrant at the base of Glen Road, 480 feet, I think we calculated it at. From the one on Bluff Ridge, it's like 540. So I don't know what the distance requirements were for fire hydrants whenever that subdivision was built. The cul-de-sac is an 80-foot. It's measured at 80 foot. I think we now require 95, 100 feet on cul-de-sacs. In reference to the issue with having the capability to meet fire flow at the top of the hill, what we would do in an instance like that, we very well could run into a problem where we're having issues because we've got a tremendous grade to overcome. Typically, our policies require us to put a pumper at that fire hydrant and boost the pressure up the hill. And I do want to emphasize, Mayor, that my own comments are solely based on what I believe allows us to deliver the best possible customer service to the residents of Bluff Ridge.
Okay.
Can I ask a question, since we got you up there and we were talking about the secondary access and things like that? When we met last week, I actually asked you about, because we know of EMS calls, because there was a neighbor apparently at 2105 that was elderly. They're not there anymore, but they had received EMS calls coming up the hill, coming up the fire lane. But when I asked the question about, why it wouldn't be a primary access, I pointed out that, if you came up Coronado and you just made the one turn, you pretty much straight shot up the fire lane. And the reason not to go up the fire lane was these other reasons that, it's too narrow and the bushes. But I believe the fire marshal, I think he was the one who said it, but he said it might be 20 or 30 seconds faster. If that was like a real road, and that was the route you took, then it might be 20 or 30 seconds faster. So my question would be, isn't 20 seconds a worthwhile advantage when you're talking about an EMS call?
In the business that we're in, time can mean the difference between life and death.
Right. So, yeah.
What I expressed to you, Councilman, is that it's certainly a shorter route, but it hadn't been used. And today we can't get a vehicle up it. We can't get an ambulance up it without causing damage.
Because of the vegetation, right?
Yeah, and
Right.
that's
So
Like I said-
and like I said, that falls back on. I mean, that's in my head, that's a minor issue, but and it's an issue. It has to get dealt with and it has to be maintained. And generally speaking, maintenance of that becomes the property owners that are, adjoining it. But the point is that it is a alternate route that you don't use now because of vegetation, but you might in the future if it was seen as being something cleared. And that 20 or 30 seconds to me is, with all due respect to property rights, it's a public safety right that the people on the hill already have in their possession. We'd be taking that away from them. And in my view, that's a lot larger than a property right that we never took something away from these people. So,
But George, the ambulance can't go up it.
because of vegetation.
Is
Vegetation
that the
is,
only reason?
Well, and
I wonder how, if the ambulance is gonna have to slow down 20 seconds
no.
worth to make
If you
that
go up
grade.
Bluff Ridge, you go up the fire lane, an ambulance is gonna have the
Well-
same sort of issue. But the point is, from the expert, is they could go up it, take away the vegetation. That's our only roadblock to getting an EMS vehicle up that hill.
but how are you gonna, the mayor said that she was gonna put up a blockade
Well,
to
first
keep
off,
people from using it.
right.
And if you put up a blockade, how do you then get up there quickly?
Well, that's to them, but I'm not suggesting a blockade be put up, but that's actually, they have the remote control access ways of doing it. He'd be better to explain how that works, but that's how you do it.
Did someone wish to speak in the back if you'd approach? Is there, I'm sorry, while Chief Smith is here, any more questions? Okay, if you would approach and identify, please. I'm sorry, there's two of you, so y'all can take turns.
He's got a uniform, so he should go first.
My name is Jerry Wagner. I live at 2104. And yesterday, I spent about 6 hours on that vegetation. So they need to go up there and take another look at it before they consider that an issue now. That's it.
With all due respect, I know you did because I spoke with you, but the biggest problem right now is the one at the base of the hill, not the Becker's. I don't know where she went, but not that lot, the one across it. That one's got some trees that have to get cut back.
I'll do those then. I'll do those tomorrow.
Okay.
What else?
So we got the citywide tree trimmer right there. All right, I appreciate that.
Next.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name's Bill Follett. I live at 2115 Bluff Ridge Drive. The question about the barricade, the city placed a barricade at the top and the bottom of that drive. It's a crash barricade. It's anchored very lightly. A truck, a pickup, or a fire department fire truck can easily push it over and drive over it without damage to the vehicle. So I'm suggesting that that's certainly a way to stop the vehicular traffic, and I agree with the need to do that, casual traffic. Secondly, I understand and appreciate the property owner's concerns about access to his lot. He has a very narrow exposure on the cul-de-sac at Bluff Ridge. I don't think that it would violate any rules. I don't think it would endanger public safety to allow him access to the fire lane as a second point of access in his lot, a circle drive or whatever he wanted to do. It's in my opinion, it's a very difficult lot to build on. So the third point I'd make is that fire lane was in existence when the property was purchased. They knew that there was a requirement there. It's a very expensive piece of concrete, and to me, it doesn't cost anything to leave it there, and particularly if you allow the property owner to use the fire lane for a second point access in his lot. So I would ask that you vote against the elimination of the easement and look into allowing the property owner access on down the hill so he can get into his lot, and look at a crash barricade at the bottom of his lot so that that'll provide him access into the lot. So I'd ask for you to vote to not to delete the easement. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, council, we've heard from everyone. I think we could, I'm sorry.
My name is Kimberly McCormick, and my husband and I are the owners of the property at the top of Bluff Ridge, at the top of the easement. And I just really want to be clear because I feel we've gotten a lot of conflict from the neighbors as if we're trying to somehow impede upon their safety in any way, and that is not our goal. I appreciate your comments very much, because my husband and I have been discussing why this has kind of become such a big deal. And the truth is, you can keep your easement if that's what the city wants to have, and if that is really going to keep us safer, because we're going to be at the top of the hill too. So, you know, we're all about that. But allowing us access to it, allowing us to put up a gate of some sort, bottom, top, wherever, is something that needs to be brought up and we need to discuss, because the truth of the matter is that it's not a sidewalk. It is not an icy escape route. It is not any walking path. It is a fire easement, and we're all for making it a fire easement. But we just would ask that the city would partner with us in making sure that is what we keep it as. That's what it's deemed to be. Then I feel like it is the city's responsibility to make sure that's what it stays, and help us do that as property owners. Because again, we're not in the business of making anyone uncomfortable or to not be safe on the hill. And if it is the safe thing to do, then we're all for that. Obviously, we just want to make sure that that is exactly what it is a fire easement, and that you would help us to make sure that that is what it stays, and that we can have some access to it. All we want to do is make a circle driveway so we can be able to back in and out of our driveway. And we did know that that was what it was when we bought the property, but it's been abandoned for a long time. That piece of property has been empty, and I would hope that the neighborhood would be on board with us completing it and finishing it for their property values. That's our goal, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I ask Mrs. McCormick one question? So if the easement stayed, you would want to use it as your driveway? Or
no,
part of
ma'am,
your
not
driveway?
part of it. We are in the process of having our plans finalized. We have a driveway that is dedicated at the entrance that way. What we wanted to do was kind of make a Y into it so that there would be a secondary access to be able, because we don't have any place for neighbors to park. We don't have we can't have anyone park in front of our house because of the narrowness between the curb and where our property line starts. And also because there is an Atmos gauge there. I think they beacon it to read meters, and there's an electrical pole right in the middle that we cannot take down or move. So our plan was to kind of leave a little island there and be able to drive into the fire easement approximately 15 to 20 feet, maybe that much, before you even get down over the hill, and make a left turn to connect to our driveway that would run in front of the house. That was our main goal, and that's the reason this whole thing started. We just wanted to know, would we be able to do that? And then we discovered the paperwork from 2001, which, made us ask again, if you were going to plan on doing it 16 years ago, can we talk about it again? So does that answer your question a little bit?
It does. I'm
Okay.
trying to just get a clear mental picture in my mind
Sure.
of what the compromise
Yeah.
suggestion is. So you'd use the top 15 or 20 feet. The end of your lot goes a lot further than that.
Yes,
farther
ma'am.
than that.
Halfway
So
down. Mhm.
at the lot line, you would envision the city putting up this crash barricade. Is that
I think that
the
was,
picture?
I can't remember your name, I'm so sorry, but that was his suggestion, and I actually had not thought of it previously. I was thinking in my mind where it would be a good place, and it might actually be the best place because the visual at that point is still good. If you've ever driven up the road or walked up the road, there is a
I just
point.
looked at it from the top.
Yeah,
and I
when you're
couldn't see
standing at the
bottom.
top, you don't see the bottom.
Right.
And when you're standing at the bottom, you don't see the top.
Right.
But the middle portion where the property line is would be maybe a good place to put a crash barrier there. It would definitely impede traffic from, coming over the hill. But, that's,
the
again,
people
that's up to
coming-
city engineers, managers,
Okay.
people. Yeah, I don't know.
But
Yeah.
as far as access to it, that's never been really a problem for me. But if it's a fire lane, you wouldn't be able to park on it.
No, we're not asking to park on it at all. And we've discussed that too. Obviously, we would never block it or park it or impede it in any way, just so that we could make an opening for another place for people to park in front of our house to make a
So
circle
quickly, would
drive.
that be possible? And we'll try to wrap it up. Mr. McDaniel? possible to use it for access to their private property.
I think we could work something out, but my concern would be us spending more money on a easement that we don't use. But
Well,
maybe there's a way we could work with the property owners if they were to do some of that at their cost.
right. Actually, we're allowed one per. If there's an answer to a question that we've posed, you're welcome to speak to it. We're,
My only thought was, I think that if it can't be abandoned, that my clients would probably agree, because having access to it would also be amenable.
acceptable, okay.
Yeah.
That answers that, I think, for all of us. One more? I don't know how many we've had, but
No, the only thing I wanted to say was that.
please identify.
Oh, I'm sorry, Linda Wagner. We live on Bluff Ridge also, and maybe Mr. Bullion can clarify this. The only thing, if I understood correctly, if there is not adequate water pressure from the hydrant on Bluff Ridge for pump reasons or for the height coming up, and that's going to lower pressure and what have you, the other hydrant that is down on Glen View would have to be used for people that are at that end of the cul-de-sac. Both of those pumps, both of those hydrants would have to be joined together in order to get adequate pressure up there for the McCormick's lot, the Bowers lot, and the house next to them. All three of those houses. And originally on the plat, I believe that's the way it was labeled, that one down on Glenview. The hoses would come up the fire lane for those specific end houses. That's all I wanted to say.
That's on a plat.
Yeah.
I believe so, yes.
There's a notation about the plan of using that.
Yes. So I would implore you to please research anything that's been brought up here today before voting on this, if there is any question, because I would hate you to fail in your fiduciary duty and this be negligent on the cause negligence on down the road. Thank you.
Chief, is that the current state of affairs? Explain about how the pumper truck would work.
Well, if the closest hydrant, either hydrant we use, the one on West Crest, which is at the base of the incline at West Crest and Bluff Ridge, you see that side. There's a hydrant about 200 feet from the corner. On the opposite side, where the fire lane terminates at Glenview or Glen Road, there's a hydrant there. So either hydrant we use, those are the two closest hydrants to be able to get water to the top of the hill. We're going to have to overcome that incline and the friction loss that's created with it. Typically what we do is we put a pumper, one of our pumper trucks, right on that hydrant to boost the pressure uphill.
Does it sound to you like in current times, we would need to use the Glenview hydrant as well as the West Crest hydrant?
No, I don't see a scenario with the type of residential construction you have on Bluff Ridge or at the top of the hill where we would have to have two hydrants to mitigate a fire in the type of structures we have there.
Any other questions by council? I think we've had a lot of conversation between the first and second meetings, but I want to cover it thoroughly because it's a very sensitive issue and there's pluses and minuses on both sides. There's no question about it. So having all the information, I would entertain a motion to approve on second reading ordinance number 2017-15. I'm sorry, 2017-14.
Mayor, I'd like to move that we postpone the vote on the second reading till next time and ask the city manager to come back to us with an estimate of costs for this crash barrier system and who might be willing to ante up and help pay for that.
Is that something that we haven't considered, but is that something beyond just a painted barrier? we're talking
I
about?
don't know. I don't know, but
I-
I'd like to have
I
some.
think it's just a
I'd like to
flood
have
barrier.
some facts about the cost. I'd like to have some facts about the ongoing maintenance cost. I'd like to have some more information about how confident we can be that these crash barriers will really stop joyriding up and down this easement. And I'd really like to know if there is out there a negotiated compromise that, for a miracle, makes everybody happy.
Okay, is that a motion to
But
defer?
I think that's going to take some more talking by city staff and figuring. So my motion is that we put this off until the next agenda.
There's a motion to defer. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a
Before we
second.
go further, are we even allowed to do that? Are we allowed to put off the second reading?
Right, there's nothing that says you have to adopt an ordinance on 2 consecutive regular
Okay.
meetings.
That's
All right.
right.
So you
Okay.
could.
There's a motion to defer and a second. All in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? Motion fails 2-3. Are there any other motions that would be made? If not, this ordinance would fail on second reading. Item number 6A is ordinance number 2017-15, authorizing city manager to execute a commercial tract, unimproved property for approximately 2.15 acre tract of land out of the Walter Fosgate Survey, number 120, abstract 138, within the city of Kerrville. More commonly known, let's wait till everyone leaves, as the former City Hall property. Mr. Hoppy?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We do have a contract within the ordinance for first reading on your agenda tonight. This is per the terms of the letter of intent that you reviewed at the last meeting. The contract has been developed based off of that LOI. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, let me ask first if anyone wishes for this to be moved to executive session for any reason. If not, are there any questions for Mr. Hoppy about the contract? This is something that we did discuss, that we were presented last meeting. If there were any questions about the contract, I know I've asked Mr. Hayes and all of those have been answered. Any other questions? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 2017-15, authorize city manager to execute this contract.
So moved.
A motion?
Second.
And 2 seconds. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries 5-0.
Again, per state law, we'll be back at your next council meeting for the second reading.
Okay. Item number 7A is a deferred annexation agreement for property generally located at 2590 Junction Highway. Mr. Hoppy.
Yes, Mayor and Council, we've got an item on your agenda tonight. We had a voluntary annexation petition that was presented to the city in the recent past for the property located now at 2590 Junction Highway. That property very recently was actually 5 separate parcels that has been conglomerated into one parcel. It is just outside of the existing city limits. The primary purpose for that voluntary annexation petition was for the ability to receive utility service. As you may recall, council has a resolution policy that states that for properties outside of the city limits to receive utility services, whether that be water or wastewater, they typically have to annex into the city. And so they brought it upon themselves to, they have a failing septic system due particularly to one tenant that they have within their commercial retail development. And so in order to hopefully receive that utility service, they had presented that annexation petition to the city. City staff has reviewed that property, and for a number of reasons, we're recommending that you enter into this deferred annexation agreement, which will still provide you the opportunity to annex the property at a later date, but it will also provide you the opportunity to provide them utility service in antithesis to that previous resolution policy. So you can provide utility service and just defer the annexation to a later date at your choosing. And that reason really was because of a number of non-conforming uses on that property that would be other issues against other city ordinance type pieces. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions by council?
I got a couple, I guess. So this is just to get wastewater, right?
Yes, and in fact, just wastewater really for one building on the
Right.
property. Yes, sir.
And so they're on the edge of the city limit anyways, right? Like the road next to them is the line.
Yes, sir.
Correct. So how close is their property even to like wastewater or water even?
Yeah, the real challenge is that it's across the highway actually to reach the main. So it will be there within the agreement. They have to basically, as any developer does, they've got to make that extension over to the wastewater main. So they'll have to bore under the highway to reach that main.
Okay, just because I'm curious, is there a water main on that side too?
I'm not.
Where's the water main that comes closest, do you know?
So I'm not sure on the water side of it. They are within the CCN of Aqua Texas, so they are provided water by Aqua, not by the city.
Yeah, I'm asking for a different reason though.
The water main is on the other side of Junction Highway. Water and sewer are on the
Does it run up a Junction Highway?
Yes.
It does? Okay.
Is that a force main or a gravity for the sewer?
The sewer is a gravity main.
Gravity?
Okay. Across from them. Just up from them, it changes from gravity, or from Ingram's force main, it drops into gravity just a few blocks towards Ingram from there. Before it crosses the road.
And my questions that I'll just share it so that we all have the same was if it can be transferred, and it is in the contract that it can, but if they change use, how that might affect volume, which we're all right there as well.
Yeah, I think the biggest concern is if it was a more intensive user, not necessarily from a volume standpoint, but just from a different quality of wastewater, if you will. And we do have within the contract that they've got to satisfy all of our pretreatment requirements. So if that was to change into a more industrial use, certainly we'd have the opportunity for them to, we would be able to review that and make sure that they are still within those guidelines that we have for all city customers on our wastewater system.
Okay, that's good. That was my main questions. Any other
Yes, ma'am.
questions by council? If not, I would ask for a motion to authorize the city manager to finalize and execute a deferred annexation agreement for the property located at 2590 Junction Highway.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries 5-0. Item number 8A is a presentation of fiscal year 2018 employee benefits. Ms. Meismer.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, we're going to talk about the employee benefits today, and it is for information and discussion only. No action will be taken today. We'll present that at the next meeting. I want to apologize in advance for the Benefits 101 crash course here today, but I think the mayor is the only one that has had knowledge of the way that we do our benefit trust, so I wanted to go through that. Oh, and I do have Bob Tracy here, our benefits consultant. I thought he was behind me. Our benefit consultant, Bob Tracy, is here as well. Okay, so we have an employee benefit trust, and that was created in July of 2008. What this does is there's an annual tax of 1.75% that's charged to, that is imposed on insurers for gross premiums from their policyholders. If a municipality or a county or a hospital creates a single entity benefit trust or participates in a Chapter 172 risk pool, they become exempt from those taxes. So that is why the council in July 2008 created the employee benefit trust. The good news is, let's look at all the savings. We've saved $406,000 since that time on it's roughly about 40 something thousand each year in taxes on our benefits. So that's very good news by doing that.
That will pay our consultant.
Yes, ma'am, and then some.
That's more than enough to pay.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that.
I'm glad to know where I'm heading.
Our renewal projections were not favorable this year. Our claims have been increasing by 26% over the last 2 claim cycles, and this is due to baseline inflation, increased RX usage, and then large medical claims. We initiated a full comprehensive invitation to bid
for all of our benefits, just to keep everybody honest, and we advertised it per the law. We received 4 proposals for medical. We received one from Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is our current provider. Their initial bid was 12.2% above our current rate, so that was a 12.2% increase. Aetna came in at 1.76% above our current. United Healthcare, cover your eyes, 18.78%, and TML 22.91%. We did some negotiations. Bob did some awesome negotiations, and we got best and final offers. Blue Cross Blue Shield came back with a 3% above current, and Aetna came in, they said they wanted to keep it at 1.76%, but they would not commit to that. They said they wanted to continue to look at our claims because we have some high claims coming up.
So will they know before you present to us?
Hopefully. And then I wanted to take you through how we determine a per employee per year. And we're going to hear that a lot, the PEPY. This is determined by taking the city contribution of the cost of coverage and multiplying it by the number of employees in each tier of coverage. A tier of coverage is like employee only, employee and spouse, employee and children, and employee and family. What we do is we take a snapshot of the number of employees in the tiers of coverage that I just mentioned at a certain time in the plan. It changes basically, it could change daily, it changes every couple of days, just as we have employees have babies, employees get married, employees get divorced, they change their tiers of coverage all the time. So we typically use a random date in May or June when we begin work on our budget for the benefits for the next fiscal year. And again, like I said, they fluctuate due to marriage, divorce, birth of children, things like that. So with Blue Cross Blue Shield, if we go with Blue Cross Blue Shield, this will be our 5th year with them. They did do a 3% rate increase from FY 2017 down from the 12.2 renewal quote. And just for historical information, in FY 17 there was no change in they did not increase or decrease our rates. In FY 16 they gave us a 5% rate decrease. In FY 17 a 3.7% rate decrease. And even if we allow the 3% increase, it's overall an average negative rate trend over the last 4 years because of the other decreases. We would have the same exact plans. We have 2 plans. We have a PPO and an HRA. Our PPO plan has a $2,500 deductible. Office visit copays are $35 for primary care and $50 per specialist. We have an RX deductible of $100, and then tiers of coverage for our prescription coverage are $15, $40, and $70, and that's for generic, brand name, and then non-formulary drugs. On the HRA plan, we have a $2,500 deductible, and the same RX deductible in plan, the $15, $40, and $70. And then we contribute, the city contributes up to $1,000 per individual or $2,000 per family for the HRA plan. What that means is if an employee only spent $200 at the doctor this year, for next year we would just contribute another additional $200 to get them back up to the $1,000. The city contribution per employee per year, that PEPY that I was talking about, would be $6,990 per employee per year, and that would have a 1-year rate guarantee on that. For the Aetna plan, FY 2018, 1.76 rate increase from FY 17. Again, the rates are not firm. Aetna said they want to review the current claims prior to committing to the best and final offer. We also did a network disruption report. What that means is the network that they choose of doctors that are in the network that provide the best coverage, and there's only a 95% match, meaning that 5% of the physicians that our employees currently use are not in the Aetna network.
But 95% of them are in the Aetna network.
95% of them are, and 5% are not. Basically the same plans as Blue Cross Blue Shield with the exception of the RX non-formulary. With Aetna it's a $60 copay, and then with Blue Cross Blue Shield it's the $70 copay. The city contribution for that would be $6,886 per employee per year with a 1-year rate guarantee. Okay, so now we have pros and cons for the Aetna and the Blue Cross plan. The pros for the Blue Cross plan, they submitted a strong best and final offer. They reduced their bid from 12.2% to 3% increase. We have a high satisfaction rate among our plan members. They perform very well with our plan administration team. Excellent customer service, excellent quality of coverage, and then they're well received in the area by the area medical community as well. With Aetna, they are a large national plan, and they submitted a qualified reasonable bid. On the cons for Blue Cross Blue Shield, they are $104 more per employee per year than Aetna is. The cons for Aetna, they want to review our current claims prior to committing to the best and final offer. And then there's also disruption with changing healthcare providers. Employees using physicians not in network with Aetna will have to change their physicians, find new physicians. Prescriptions will have to be changed based on different formularies, and mail order prescriptions will have to be resubmitted to the new mail order provider, and then the time and expense of enrolling into a new plan. So our FY18 proposed budget right now is $6,500 per employee per year for benefits, and that includes the medical, dental, voluntary life, and AD&D. Employee only is 100% paid by the city. Dependent coverage is medical is 60 to 62% paid by the city, and dental is 12% paid by the city. On our voluntary benefits, no city contribution for employee or dependents, and those are vision, supplemental life, and AD&D, and then the short-term disability. Currently, in this plan year that we're in right now, the FY17 plan year, Blue Cross Blue Shield medical is $6,649. Dental is $287, and group life and AD&D is $75 per employee per year. And that comes to a total of $7,011 per employee per year. Our anticipated benefit reserve, which was approved by council, was so we have the total of $7,011. Our budget was $6,500 for this year as well, so that leaves $511. And remember, I said we take a snapshot of how many employees we have, and when we did this snapshot it was 302 employees, and that anticipated benefit reserve was $154,322. The good news is that as of June 30th we've only used $55,354, so we've only used 1/3 of the expected reserve, and we're 9 months into the plan. So what I'm saying is we might not use the whole benefit reserve that we're anticipating, just simply because of all the changes that take place throughout the year. So for FY18, option 1 is the Blue Cross Blue Shield. If we use the Blue Cross Blue Shield, it'll be $6,990 per employee per year for the medical. Dental will be $304 per employee per year. Group life and AD&D went down $62 per employee per year for a total of $7,356. Anticipated benefit reserve, we have $6,500 budgeted, so that leaves $856. When we took the snapshot, that we had 295 employees in the plan, and that comes to $252,520 anticipated benefit reserve. The benefit reserve balance as of 7/18/2017 is $487,413. $487,413. So we have plenty to cover that. But again, like we're doing this year, we're only using 1/3 of it at this time. It would be our 5th year with Blue Cross Blue Shield. We have a high satisfaction rate among our plan members, and they're well received by the area medical community. Is everything okay? No questions yet? Okay. All right, for the option 2, Aetna. Aetna would be $6,886 per employee per year. The dental $304, group life and AD&D $62. That comes to $7,252 per employee per year. Anticipated benefit reserve, our budget is $6,500 again per employee. That leaves $752 times the 295 employees, and that would be an anticipated benefit reserve of $221,840. And again, we have $487,000 in there. The problem is they're not committed to the best and final offer rate. The PEPY may change. We have a 5% disruption with network, and the disruption with changing the plan providers. Any questions on medical? Okay. Standard Life gave us a package deal for the remainder of our benefits, which includes dental, vision, group life and AD&D, voluntary life and AD&D, and voluntary short-term disability. On the dental, MetLife, who is our current provider, came in with their renewal at a 5% increase with a 1-year rate guarantee. Standard Life proposed a 3% increase with the same exact plan design as the current with MetLife. The city contribution toward the cost of dependent coverage would be from 9% to 12%, and that's from $287 per employee per year to $304 per employee per year. The total increase would be $2,337 annually. The employee contribution would stay the same. The city would absorb the increase and fund with the benefit reserve. And that is a package deal with Standard Life, and they gave us a 2-year rate guarantee, which is nice. On the vision, MetLife is our current provider. They didn't have any change in the plan or the rates, and they gave us a 1-year guarantee on the rates. Standard Life, remember the package deal with the dental and the vision and all the other ancillary benefits. They gave us no change in the rates. It is still the VSP network, which is the same network that we're using with MetLife, and the 2-year rate guarantee through 10/1 of 19. Our other ancillary benefits are group life and AD&D. We got a 20% decrease on that through Standard Life. Voluntary life, we had no change in rates. Voluntary AD&D, no change in rates. Voluntary short-term disability, a 9.09% decrease. And they gave us a 3-year rate guarantee for all of those benefits through 2020. This is one of our favorite slides. It's our budget analysis of the city contribution. All the way since I started back in, well, I started in 2007, but this is when I started doing this, was FY 2008. And you can see how far we've come, because we used to have to budget $8,950 per employee per year. We're all the way down to $6,500, which is really, really good. Our next steps for next meeting, August the 8th. And I want to tell you how this will happen, because it's a little bit different. You have to actually, once the item comes up on your agenda, the mayor will actually recess the regular council meeting and convene the meeting of the City of Kerrville Employee Benefit Trust. The City Council serves as trustees of the Employee Benefit Trust, and the proposed FY 2018 benefits will be presented to you. Staff will recommend approval of the benefits. Motion second, and all in favor. And then the mayor will then reconvene the regular meeting of the City Council, and the next agenda item will be to approve a resolution authorizing the transfer of funds from the City of Kerrville to the City of Kerrville Employee Benefit Trust to pay for the employee-related benefits. It's kind of a weird situation, but that's how you have to do it. Any questions?
I've got one, and I suppose I don't, but so is there a sense of, if we were shifting to Aetna, is there a sense of how volatile their rates are? Like, if you shifted, are they going to be able to hold somewhat steady? Like,
I think Bob can probably answer that.
Mayor, member of the City Council, good to be with you tonight. That's a question that has been going through my mind right now. I do a lot of business with both Aetna, Blue Cross, and United Healthcare. You know, in this industry today, we're pretty much down to 3 major carriers: Aetna, Blue Cross, and United Healthcare. Cigna is a spot market in mostly urban areas. The thing I like about Blue Cross in rural America is this is where they kind of work their stuff. They do so much backdoor work for Medicaid, Medicare, for a lot of state programs, school districts. You know, they cut their teeth in rural America, and they do it well. When you get into the urban areas, that's where United Healthcare and Aetna really want to run their show. So with that being said, I would just simply say, if I had a slogan for Blue Cross, is they know rural healthcare, and you're definitely in rural healthcare. Now, it is growing towards you, San Antonio, and you're seeing more hospitals along I-10. But right now, I still believe that Blue Cross knows your market, and they're good at it. The second thing is that one of the reasons that I think Blue Cross rethought their position, and I don't think they ever met the 12.2, they meant it, but that's what they do. Underwriters come out fairly lazy a lot of times. But when the best and final offer came out, or the process, it was the push to zero. My goal is always push to zero or decrease, and you can tell by these numbers over the time, that's what we do here. But that being said, it's really cool to have a carrier that we've been with for a long period of time. And I guarantee you that underwriter paid attention to that and had a lot of history. By this time next year, when we renew with Aetna, they're going to have very immature data.
Right.
It's going to be their data. Aetna works off of what's called incurred claims, meaning even 9 months into the plan year, they're only going to have about 6 months of data that they trust. That means they're going to probably inject a lot of manual rating into it. And I know how they rate. And what that means is probably they're not going to have the confidence in our numbers that we're actually performing at, because they talk about using prior carriers, but they don't trust each other's data. So when you have a renewal like you have with Blue Cross at 3%, and over the past 3 years have pushed prices down, they have basically given us back dividends over the years. That's a great partnership. And I think, based on what Kim was saying too, with the disruption of the employees, this margin, believe me, Aetna is not going to push down. And I will tell you that the last 2 months of our plan year have not been good. Blue Cross is in. They're done. So at the end of the day, I think we ride with a partner who's been a partner to us. They know our business. We'll have even more mature claims to work off of. And one of the things I discussed with them this year is, look, this city has been with you, and it's time for dividends. This was not a year to get a dividend. They probably should have had more of a deficit recovery.
Yeah.
But I said, look at the history of this case. It's time to pay us a dividend on this one, and we got it. So I think it's a great partnership, and it's one we ought to stick with.
And if I was reading it right, really the only overall difference between the two is we're talking like $30,000 in the reserve. Is that what we're really saying?
That's right.
Okay.
Yes. That's right.
All right.
So that was a super question, because I was thinking about just that kind of conversation with you all.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Bob, what's caused our claim history to?
Well, you know, it's not unlike any other group that I'm seeing today, but the fact of the matter is that when you look at these numbers that Kim showed you, I think staff has been doing a great job of just pushing this premium rate down. That's number one. And therefore, at some point, it's kind of like a Nerf ball. You know, you squeeze that Nerf ball, but you can only squeeze it so much, and at some point it has to begin to expand. I think that we push these rates down about as far as we can over the course of time. And I think it's probably a natural phenomenon that we're going to see some expansion in the loss ratio. But that being said, this year we've had a few more large claims than we've had in the past, claims over $25,000. We're starting to see an uptick on our pharmacy side. For the first time, we've seen a creep in of biotech and specialty drugs that we're seeing out there. Folks, this is becoming a very big concern across this country for employer health plans. Yesterday, I got word on one of my cases, 220 employees, that we just got word from disease management, who manages the case, that we now have a claimant that is probably going to be going through a $750,000 drug therapy over this next year. We're going to see a lot more of this. We had the first creep in of some of those type of drugs. We're talking about drugs that are not just CVS, Caremark, and Walgreens. We're talking about infusion therapies for cancer. We're talking about heart medications, immune therapies, and factoring and everything else. That's another issue that we saw from that standpoint. So it's more than just seeing the doctors in the lab this year. We had a creep in, as Kim said, we had a 26% uptick in our claim cycle just since we did 2-3 years ago when we're seeing our decreases. Now, the news is that it doesn't mean it's going to continue.
No,
but it
that's
was,
what I'm getting
it was
at.
during
Is
a
this
renewal cycle.
Right. That drug thing may continue to escalate, but I hope that the big major claims are random things that we would not expect to see happen year after year.
You would hope that they regress. We call it regressing back to the mean. These folks get well,
Right.
and we hope that's how we spend our money, because that's what we want. So, again, overall, I think Blue Cross has been a good steward of our money. They have high product satisfaction, and I think just out of sending a message to Blue Cross, I think we ought to make this decision for the good of the taxpayers, the city, and the employees and their families.
And I know last year when you were here, you said, I have no idea what I'm going to be telling you next year. Because we had no idea where this industry was going. So.
And I don't know what we're going to be talking about next year.
Let's just hope it holds out a few weeks.
But this year, I think it's a good decision, and Standard's going to be a great company to come in and take all those ancillaries. It's going to make things pretty simple. Good to see y'all again.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments by council? Okay, if not, let's move forward to item number 8B, and thank you for being here,
Thank
sir.
you.
For the budget and economic update, Ms. Yarborough.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the report for ending the month of June 30. We're at 75% of the year on our budget. Our revenues in the general fund for the month of June was $1,395,631. Our year-to-date revenues is $24,563,236. Our expenditures for the month of June in the general fund was $1,935,190, and our year-to-date expenditures was $20,245,193. In the water sewer fund for the month of June, our revenues was $944,218, with our year-to-date of being $8,430,146. Our expenditures was $870,058, with our year-to-date of being $8,357,464. And I want to call your attention back up to the general fund under the sales tax. We've been very healthy this year. It's higher than we had anticipated, so we're on a very good trend. In the hotel motel fund, our revenues for the month was $113,998, with our year-to-date of being $875,310, and our expenditures was $231,250, with our year-to-date of being $768,950. And in this month was another quarter that we paid CVB. We pay them in quarterly payments, so that was a large payment to them. On the next one is the community investment plan. These are our most active projects at this time. It gives your project budget, your current month expense, your project to date expense, and your remaining project balances. In the next section at the bottom under development activities, we had 11 new resident permits issued, and in commercial we had $8,637,07 in new and improvements in permits issued for the month of June. In your housing, the inventory is staying fairly regular. We have had a pretty good sales month, and then your unemployment is holding regularly. And then in utility billing, we have about a 1.5% increase on our accounts from month to month.
Just a quick observation. I'm sure y'all will be able to tell me, but the difference from prior year on total expenditures in general fund, probably, I'm trying to think.
That ties back to 2 budget amendments we did earlier in the year. And so therefore we increased the budget this year over last year, so you're going to see a great difference. We had a budget amendment in January and one again in April that impacted those.
That's right. To the capital fund. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
That's right. Any other questions for Ms. Yarbrough?
This is one I've always wondered about. The sales tax increase that we seem to be getting, I mean, we're in a good, strong trend with that. Do we know if it's driven more by new businesses or the same old businesses doing more sales? Do we have any?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
Higher prices.
Okay.
Inflation. Any other questions by council? Thank you, Ms. Yarbrough.
Thank you.
Item number 9A is appointments to boards and commissions. Chief Knight.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. You may recall that in the first meeting in April of this past year, we came to reappoint our current city board member to the Kerr 911 Emergency District, Mr. Paul Huckton. He has taken a position in the private sector, which will vacate that position. So coming before you to consider appointment to the Kerr Emergency 911 Network Board of Lieutenant Mary Krebs to replace Mr. Paul Huckton. She's the Support Services Division Lieutenant at the Police Department, and the Communications Center and Dispatch Operations falls within her division. So the recommendation would be that you consider her appointment as the city representative to that board.
Okay, any questions by council? If not, I would consider an appointment of Lieutenant Krebs. We have a motion.
Second.
And we have a second. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Chief, and thank Lieutenant Krebs. Item number 10 is City Manager's Report. Mr. McDaniel.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Mayor and Council, the first thing I want to do is introduce a new staff member, Guillermo Garcia. Guillermo, if you can come on up. Guillermo comes to us from the City of Dallas. He helped me set up the Center for Performance Excellence there. He's a certified master black belt in Lean and Six Sigma, and he's also a certified Baldrige examiner, and he has a master's degree. And so I think we're very fortunate to have him fill our position of executive director for strategic initiatives, and he'll be applying some of the same things that he did in Tyler in Dallas, now here in Kerrville, looking at process improvement, looking at our training programs, and while at the same time looking to, I think, oversee some departments that we have some opportunities to, I think, do great things in terms of some savings for the overall organization. So with that, Guillermo, do you have any brief comments?
Just a few. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm excited about joining the team. I think we have a lot of great opportunity to make some positive change within the city. I think through the programs that we're going to implement, like Lean Six Sigma, as Mark mentioned, City University, and business planning, and some other things, we're going to be able to really look to enhance the performance of the organization, or as I like to say, achieve the highest levels of performance excellence. And so that's our overall goal, and we look forward to working with you and also the rest of the departments within the city.
Welcome, Mr. Garcia. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
Look forward to great savings.
We're going to try our best.
And great strategic initiatives.
And then, so the next
you lay down
item.
that line real quick, don't you? She's looking for great savings. I'm just saying she puts the pressure right on right away.
Yeah, right. We're used to that. So with the fountain, I also wanted to give you an update at the park. So we hope to have a plan in place on how we're going to move that project forward tomorrow. So Ashley's meeting with the contractor, the vendor tomorrow to put together and finalize a plan, and I'll share that with you as soon as we know something. And then finally, you may have seen some activity at 524 in the river, where we're putting in the pilings for the new bridge that actually supports the new reuse line. So it's not a pedestrian bridge, it's a bridge for the water line. And so it's right there next to the existing bridge. And there was a plan as part of that project to take that bridge out. And so we're kind of stepping back from that just a little bit, and we've got about another month to look at that closer, to look at other options about if it's possible to maintain a portion of that bridge for either pedestrians or fishermen or what have you. So just wanted you to be aware that that was going on, because people may be calling you, what's going on down at the river at Kerrville Shriner.
And I would ask that you look really hard at keeping it, because I've been using it as a crossover on my bike, and when I have to go up to the bridge, it's really rough up there. And
I did receive some comments at the UGRA cleanup too this past weekend that we could keep it if possible.
Can we clean it? Can we keep
They
it
were
clean
cleaning it
behind
Saturday.
Well, that's the problem, is that
That's the
it's just,
problem.
you have a lot of traffic out there. It's not currently part of the park. It's right outside of the park. There's a lot of debris that's caught on the upriver side because you can't pass under the bridge. It's 6 inches below the water level. When the dam went in, that's the situation that we had. So, we're looking at possibilities of opening up a portion of it to let some of that through.
That would be
or something else. But anyway, I just want you to be aware of that.
Seriously, there's Adopt a Highway programs. I wonder if any organization, is that possible to do on city property like that, if a group were to take that on?
You can, but this is pretty heavy work. This is not just, trash pickup.
No, this
You've got a lot of
There's
major
debris, sometimes wood and logs.
Bad old stuff.
Or
I
maybe
wouldn't want anybody
parks.
I knew touching it.
We touched a lot of stuff.
but on the upside, it keeps the junk from going into the state park.
True.
That's right.
True.
That's right.
So anyways. sorry.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay. If that's all from Mr. McDaniel, item number 11 is items for future agendas. Council, is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to see on another agenda? I think we have kind of our plate full from what you've given us and what we did this evening. We don't have any need. We made our decision for executive session. Then I suppose we are ready to adjourn at 7:29.